I want to tell everyone that all of you can write. All of you can be a writer of your own history. Now, all of you can be a writer of your own history, which will eventually relate to the history of the nation. The way I write my book, I also emphasize a lot on family tree. If you look into my book, there is a page that shows a family tree. Now, this family tree actually is an example for you to follow and just fill in the blanks. Which means I write my father to be Saleh Sarima and my mother to be Noribah Mosira. You can just erase that, or you just write a pencil and you write the names there. Eventually you actually create a family tree of your family. And why I also emphasize a lot on family tree, because family tree or they call it genealogy, tells the story of your life. It's very awkward for me to initially ask family tree from my parents. When I asked my mother, asked my grandmother, I was very, very shy to ask them, where do I come from? Because the first thing I get is, hey, what's wrong with you? You're not thankful to or being born. Yes, I got that type of remark remarks from my grandmother. But then there is a certain secrecy there also in that family. So it's very hard to create a family tree, but eventually you will. Now, if you see the way I share with you is something that I share with everyone also. Very casual. Very casual. I will put you into the place and let you feel the environment from imaginations. So she said to me, you write very academic, you're an engineer and you make things worse. So I will never buy your book because it's very, very dry. And you have colorful items like the fabrics or the weaponry or the language. Bugis is very colorful, yet you make it very, very academic, so it's not good. And you can find hundreds of academic writings on the Bugis in Asia and some even in Singapore. So he said, why not you just write the way you breathe? The way you breathe, just write. If you need to have a comma or full stop, you write it. So I eventually started to write in a narrative manner. And I think it worked. Initially when I write in narrative manner, the big challenge was it sounds very, very passive. Sounds very like I'm just repeating something that I've heard. So another advice came to me and said, you just write like as though you're speaking to your friend. So Alhamdulillah, after I launched this book, I've got lots of people who wrote to me saying that when they read the book, they felt that I was in the bedroom when they read it at home. So that was a positive thing. Now, why I write it personally? Just to put things forward. Well, 3 months ago, there was an opening ceremony or commissioning ceremony of one place like this, Pondok Jawa, by URA, by Kelvin Ang. And I heard him speaking for the very first time. And what caught my attention from his speech was this word called cultural orphan. Remember? So the word cultural orphan is a very, very strong meaning for us. And to reach out to the public is to speak in a very sincere manner on how often you feel as a Singaporean. So when he mentioned cultural orphan, it spurred my mind into thinking that yes, we are indeed cultural orphan. We don't have any culture to cling on to. We have lots of anthropologists in Singapore. We have lots of archaeologists. We have lots of historians, and even sociologists who spoke loud about Singapore's culture. Yet, they themselves do not know where they come from. What heritage can they cling on to? So for me, back to the past, when I started to write this book, I started to look for what's missing in me. What's missing in me? That's why it's much easier. Then when this lady called Chong Li Fong, I tell them to write according to my own narrative, it's much easier for me to relate. So I make it very, very personal. But I do get advice from people like Professor Kevin Tan of NUS Law Society. He did tell me that despite of you writing something personal, have the element of documentation. complementing your story, which means I tell about my personal lifestyle, about why am I called Tuah, why am I called Bugis, then what's Bugis, and then why I can't flip the fish. I relate to why I can't flip the fish, which is in the book. Okay. So and if you look at the way I explain things, I don't just explain the spiritual part of it, but I also explain the logic part of it. Okay, for example, let's look at the fish. Like you say, the Bugis say that my father said, don't flip the fish because the house will turn upside down. When you're eating it, don't flip the fish when you're eating it, because the house will flip. And when I was on board the ship, I met this group of Bugis people eating fish. And when one of them actually flipped, the other guy said, kau pusing ni tulang, kapal terbalik. Which means if you flip the bones, flip the fish to get the flesh part, the whole tugboat will just capsize. So that is the spiritual part of it. Then if you look at the logical part of it, your parents don't want you to flip the fish because why? When you flip, you disorientate all the bones that has been left on one side, and you flip over when you eat the flesh, you might not know that you probably pick up the bones with the flesh and put it into your throat. So this is all about safety. But then the Bugis make it such a way that it becomes very spiritual and very, very, something very spiritual and nothing methodical. So back to So what I do, I do lots of personal stories to relate into my book. Okay, that's the first reason is to let you have a feel of how I actually relate my stories into history. Second thing is that I want to tell everyone that all of you can write. All of you can be a writer of your own history. Now, all of you can be a writer of your own history, which will eventually relate to the history of the nation. The way I write my book, I also emphasize a lot on family tree. If you look into my book, there is a page that shows a family tree. Now this family tree actually is an example for you to follow and just fill in the blanks. Which means I write my father to be Saleh Sarima and my mother to be Noribah Mosira. You can just erase that, or you just write a pencil and you write the names there. Eventually you actually create a family tree of your family. And why I also emphasize a lot on family tree, because family tree or they call it genealogy, tells a story of your life. It's very awkward for me to initially ask family tree from my parents. When I asked my mother, asked my grandmother, I was very, very shy to ask them, where do I come from? Because the first thing I get is, hey, what's wrong with you? You're not thankful to or being born. Yes, I got that type of remark from my grandmother. But then there is a certain secrecy there also in that family. So it's very hard to create a family tree, but eventually you will. Like for me, when I did my family tree, it took me like almost 7 years before I could actually bring it forward. My maternal side and my paternal side. So my paternal side is very easy, all Bugis. But the thing is that they don't talk so much. The Bugis, they don't really speak so much. I think all of us are Bugis here. Secrecy, shy. Sometimes the name, the stigma of Bugis Street and people dancing there and Bugis Junction, people have that negative stigma on who the Bugis are, so they don't speak about it. Now my mother's side is another complex issue. My mother is adopted. She's adopted. She's adopted. She's a mixed Dutch and Hokkien, and she doesn't want to be known. But since it's recorded in podcast, so she has that problem in relating her story. But she is an excellent narrator of the Bugis history. Because she lived, I was in Hougang. I lived in Hougang before, in Kampung Lorong Berhala, She was in Roadside Primary School, and she went to Cedar Girls. And when she was in Cedar Girls, she learned a lot about the Sultan of Johor, which had an istana there before. Istana Henry. Bidadari. So she learned a lot. And my late grandmother also has witnessed Sir Sultan Ibrahim of Johor actually loafing around Serangoon Road. Because if you want to know, the history of Serangoon Road, Serangoon Road was the first road built by the Crown Colony, and Serangoon Road was financed by Temenggung Ibrahim. Why? Because he wanted his carriage to move from Teluk Blangah all the way to Kangkar and take a boat to Tanjung Putri. So if you look at my YouTube, I have a YouTube called Sarafian Saleh, and the title is Matilda House. And the Matilda House, which was said to be haunted, actually was built by the Matilda family, and Sultan Johor liked to go there because why, he parked his boat from there to Johor, to Tanjung Putri. Tanjung Putri eventually became Johor Bahru. Yes. So that's my story about why I made my book very, very personal. Because from the personal perspective, I can actually navigate my life into identifying the history of the Bugis and eventually Singapore. Okay, you might speak.
Yes, I'm just going back to what you said about cultural orphan.
Yes.
And about the history of the nation. So there's a bit of a paradox, as I was saying in the speech. The paradox is that we feel ourselves cultural orphans, we feel ourselves devoid of identity, and therefore not having a rootedness to the country. But saying that, there is also a paradox, because as you have discovered, our heritage in Singapore is extremely rich, and it is born out of intermixing of so many things that the whole of the Nusantara provides in this very small concentration on this island. So how is it that us being in Singapore, feeling culturally orphaned, yet sitting on this rich history and not tapping onto it? So that's the second thing I want to ask you. What is the important, I mean you've alluded to it, but I just want you to go into it. What is the importance of all Singaporeans to trace back their own heritage and history?
When you want, the reason of why you want to trace your history is because you want to know why your forefathers chose Singapore and stayed on here until today and not going back. Why did my first generation of forefathers named Daing Sabban came here in 1800 or 1790? He came here and he called this place home. Why? Why so? So there is something in Singapore that they have experienced that we young generations have yet to discover. Why did my I'm the sixth generation Bugis. My name is Sarafian bin Saleh bin Sariman bin Daing Dasim Daing Muhammad Daing Sabban. So I'm the sixth. I've got two boys, they're adults already, and they'll be the seventh generation. So why is this so important? Why is it so important for us to know our culture? It's because we will do our genealogy. From genealogy, we will know the answers to why your parents chose Singapore, and that actually creates a sense of self-awareness and patriotism. It's a psychology. If you look into the total defense of Singapore, we have the 5-6 pillars of defense. One of them is psychological defense, the other is social defense. Now we are looking to psychological defense. Okay, when I do guidings, especially for schools, for younglings, for secondary schools, for even primary schools, I've got to go through all these 6 total pillars of defense in Singapore to inculcate this idea to the young, so they know the value of nationhood. And the most important thing that I tell them to do is to find their family tree, is to construct a family tree. The family tree is the most important tool for anybody who wants to know who they are.
It's actually origin of the roots.
Origin of the roots, yes. Origin of the roots.
It's more to that.
Yes. Then you will discover that why your father from Hainan, from Fujian, come to Singapore and they don't want to go back. That means there's something here that hold them back. Yes, okay, there are some reasons where they can't afford to go back already. Okay, because of poverty. Let's look at other examples like the Samsui women. Samsui women, they actually came here to work hard to build OCBC Center, and send the money back. Yes, they can send money back, but they don't even have enough money to go back to China and see their husband and their children, and they died here. Okay, so this is just one of the reasons. Same for the some of the Bugis Sulawesi seafarers. Okay, I don't see much sad stories about the Bugis. You know, when they came here and they worked, because they were hardworking, the industrious. They were very industrious. To them, they just work lah. They can be a carpenter, can be a warehouse manager, can be landowners, but they will live here because the nice things about the Bugis, which I discovered, that they are very sociable people. not only Bugis, but I think all the Malay. Because we ourselves, we are in the Malay archipelago, so there is a certain sense of belonging. But nevertheless, there are some people who are still very lonely. But when I read stories about, okay, I'm not being biased. I'm very fair when I read articles about people of Singapore. I read other races also, like Samsi women or the coolies, the Chinese coolies, or the Chettiars. So what actually saddened me was actually the people like Samsi women. They came here, they cannot afford to go back. So stories from them are very sad, but yet some of them still bore children, and some of them really become very successful millionaires in Singapore. So it all boils back to your origin. It boils back to your origin to find out where you come from, who you are, especially like your forefathers, like my forefathers, like Mr. Musat's forefathers. We came here, we laboured, and we eventually don't want to go back to Sulawesi. We just call it home. Like in 1849, when the Dutch declares Sulawesi to be a free port, lots of Bugis, they went back to Sulawesi. They don't want to work together with the British. But my grandfather told me, my late grandfather, Tuah Sariman, he did tell me when I was starting to know about the roots. He said, we are fortunate to stay in Singapore because the British, the British, despite of them being the Tuan during his period, but they taught us how to fish, how to fish, how to be smart, they educate us. They give us a good policy. Unlike the Dutch, when they go back to Sulawesi, the Dutch they don't teach you how to fish. They just give you fish.
They press the people.
They just give you fish, and they don't teach you how to develop. So that's a problem with the Dutch colony. So that's one thing I realized that for my forefathers to be here in Singapore is because they were thankful to what the policy had for us. So this is something that I share with everyone. That, if you know your forefathers, ask them the story. Ask them the story of what made them feel a sense of belonging in Singapore. Then from there, the young generation say no, that we actually work very hard. We can so-called suffer. We suffer just to make sure this place is a comfortable place to live.
In the book, you spoke a bit about the negative connotation of being Bugis.
Yes.
Can you go into that?
Okay. I did mention a bit about my sister. My sister when
Garan.
when we were a child. When I was young, I don't even know I was a Bugis until I broke a flower pot because I was angry. I was born in Hougang, but I was pampered in a place called Lorong Maidin in Changi. That was where my grandfather lived. He has a big house there, and I was a king. Everything I do is right. My father, I'm the untouchable. When I got angry, my mother couldn't touch. My father would yell, But then, but when my father yelled and my father hit me, my grandfather, my aunties were very scared. So my father tied me to a tree and caned me because why? If he were to hold me and kill me, I will try to dodge and I will run. So he tied me to a tree first, then he will kill me. Easy. So before my father could punish me, my auntie would punish me first, but she would just shout, she wouldn't beat me. And she would say, Bugis, Bugis, anak Bugis. Like when you're young, most people will say, Satan, shaitan. Banul, bodoh. But in my family, it's not this words. It's Bugis. It's like, oh, scary. But then, during Hari Raya, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother said, Iba means my mother lah, Noriba. Mari kita pergi Bugis. Just say, I thought Bugis is a bad word. But why do you have to go to Bugis and do shopping? So these are some of the negative things which I thought. The second negative thing is that as we grew up, my mother would tell my sister, say that if people ask you who you are, which race you come from, then my sister said, Malay lah. No, they must ask you who you are. You must say you Java, orang Jawa. Don't say anything else. I say, okay. Then I said, but I thought you're Bugis. No. Jawa. Then eventually I got to learn from my lady cousin. He said, no, lady kakak. He said, no, because if my sister said that she's a Bugis, then she won't get married. Because they say the Bugis people were haram, very fierce. Yeah. So that's that stigma. The third thing is that when I was in school, I was in Sec 2. My history teacher, Mr. Joseph Ng, he taught us history. Sec 2 I was already starting to learn Southeast Asia. Okay, I don't like history. Honestly, I don't like history before. That's why third and fourth year I went to pure science. So there's no history. But on second year, I remember my late teacher Joseph, very excellent teacher. No? I really like him. He passed away. He talked about the Southeast Asia. Then he come to the Ilanuns and the Bugis. He said, well, the Bugis, they were hardworking traders in Singapore, but they are pirates. I still have the book. I kept it. So they mentioned pirates. So I said, no wonder my family they don't want to talk about Bugis. And I was a little boy, 4 years old, I was shouted like a Bugis. So these are the negative things that I heard of. And until such time when I started to read about the Bugis, the Dutch called the Bugis boogeyman. If you look in my Facebook now, Tuah Bugis, I also posted a video documented by the Blair brothers. Excellent video about Singapore and Sulawesi. He even mentioned Bugis as the boogeyman. So these are some of the things that makes me...
Boogeyman means someone to be feared.
To be feared.
Yeah.
To be feared.
To scare children.
Yeah, to scare children. Boogeyman. No? But then the Dutch lady, there's a Dutch lady who attended my talk about 2 weeks ago. I did for Friends of Museum. He said the Dutch don't call people boogeyman. No? They call boerman. Probably it's the English who Anglicize the word the boogeyman. So the word Bugis is very, very honest. I tell you honestly, it's very dirty to me. I really don't like people say Bugis. I even thought the Bugis Portuguese. Maybe Portuguese. Maybe Bugis are a spin-off from the Portuguese, but they're the Malay type man, and they terrorize Asia. So this is a sad truth. This is a sad truth. Until I started to photograph Masjid Temenggung Naik Ibrahim, then I shoot my mother. That was in 1986. My mother said, look for the history of this Masjid Temenggung. There is lots of Bugis stories in there. So there are lots. So I live in a period of contradiction. They say the Bugis were brave, the Bugis were good, they were wealthy, but they have this sort of negative characters. And the worst thing is that I got to know that the hottest place before where mad sailors congregate is a place called Bugis Street. Okay, just to share with you, the word mad sailor eventually evolved into Mat Saleh. You know, because of the Malay slang, Mat Saleh, but it's actually mad sailor. And they're on Bugis Street. And I also give lectures to American Embassy fortnightly for 2 years already. So about a year ago, there was this submarine captain. He was when he came to Singapore, he was only I don't know, bosun or chief mate, but he's a retired submarine commander. So I give lectures on all these people, and he told me that the first time he came to Singapore was in 1974, and this Bugis Street, and he's glad to meet that the Bugis man that is actually a person and not a street. Is Senior Pesi, if you look into the principles of the Bugis, they say that life must be straight. Whatever you do must be straight. When you speak, you must speak the truth. Everything must be straight, sincere, and you must honor what you say. And the Bugis are they like to keep promises and they like to have some deals. So because of that, promises and deals, and when deals are met, they become very angry, and that made them very violent. In those days. So like sailors, captains of ships, they become very violent because why? They cannot miss the wind. When somebody is late, when they miss the wind, they lose their cargo 6 months later. And that's what makes them very, very aggressive and very, very, very loud. So everything's straight until the way they design the weapons is straight. This Bugis Chris is called a sapokal. Sapokal. For sapokal means satu. Sapokal or sapokala.
Oh, it's not curved.
It's not curved. It's not curved, but it's bent. So the bent part makes it like not the ayam, not the chicken taji, the taji. No. Why is it curved? So because they want to have maximum damage to the body. When they penetrate, when they penetrate, the bend actually makes the hand twist. No. So this is called sapokal, and the Bugis, and this signifies the Bugis Chris. Bugis Chris. So mostly Chris are all wavy, but the Bugis blade is straight to show that this is their principle of life. When the Majapahits and Sumatrans or Malays and they build Chris, it's more for it's for fighting, but they have time to create it, and more for dressing. When the Bugis realized, when the Bugis got a Chris, they realized that I don't need to have any beauty in killing people. I just want it to be functional. So the Bugis don't make it curvy, they make it straight. They make it straight, they mass produce it for war. And hence that's how it all came about. And then of course then the philosophy of being straight or being sincere probably come together with the production of the Chris.
The blade itself has some Damascene pattern.
Yes. This is because of two types of metal.
Big sir, a lot, maybe 7.
Okay, I think
this
I think it's only 2 or 3. Meteor, the dark one is meteor. Meteor, the light one is nickel. So these people call the blacksmith, the Bugis, called Pandai Besi, Pandai Besi, or Malay called Pandai Besi. Pandai Besi. Pandai Besi. They'll put the two metal, they anneal. They'll keep knocking. Now they keep knocking to deoxidize the blade so they won't rust easily, and it's very strong. So they knock. Then in fact they quench it in oil or they quench it in water to have the strength of the blade.
Sulawesi itself is the name for Bumi Besi.
Okay, if you look at the book also mention Sulawesi actually derived from the word Seru Besi.
Seru Besi. Yeah.
And there are some research say that when the meteors hit the Earth in Asia, a lot of the meteors actually land in Sulawesi for some reasons we don't know. The meteors always land in Sulawesi, hence it's called Seru Besi. So that's one possibility that I wrote.
And they say the material there is one of the original and the best to make weapon.
The nickel. So the Bugis took pride of the Chris. So this Chris also became an epicenter for me to discover my roots also. When I first collected Chris in 2006, I bought a Chris. Actually, I have a Chris, my family's heirloom. So I showed to my friend, says Sharial Tahir. They say, this Chris Bugis, you're Bugis. I say, I think so. I just think so. I don't dare to tell I'm Bugis. Because they say that if you're Bugis, maybe they want to be near you. But then I said, yeah, that's my family heirloom. Then that's where I actually bought this from Sulawesi. I bought this from Sulawesi. I tell them to craft for me. This is a new one. I've got some old ones at home. Some really old antiques which I purchased. But then this one I asked them to commission for me. So they actually did for me. This was 10 years ago already. So 10 years ago I actually tell them to make for me a Chris Sapokal. It cost about 1,500 I think. So I did it, and I find that the Chris became a center of attraction for me to identify who am I. So right now, if they ask me to have an exhibition about Bugis, there are three things I will definitely bring. I'll bring the Chris. I'll bring the Chris. I'll wear his hat. Can you see his mushat? His hat. Songkok Tok Bone. That's a Bugis hat. And I'll wear my Bugis sarong. I shall do it today. So these are three things I bring whenever I'm invited for an exhibition or talk about Bugis. So I'll bring this. So this became the center of conversation. So why I bring this Bugis Chris is because first of all the blade is straight to signify the principles of life. Secondly is that this thing looks like a ship. It shows that the Bugis navigating culture. The third thing is that this thing is head of a bird, a pigeon. The Bugis called Teleng Merpati. Teleng Merpati means a tilting pigeon. It's not a headache or whatever. So these are something that we Bugis adopt. So when Islam came to Sulawesi in 1604, when they formalized Islam as the national religion, they changed all the patterns of the weapons and the fabrics.